Good evening, everybody. We are now live streaming on Facebook.
And I know the people did.
So if we could, I'm going to call this special meeting, our goals and workshops objectives meeting to order. It is 7:02. Can you please call the roll for me, Catherine?
President Malzahn, I think you're out of order on the agenda. Pledge of Allegiance is next.
It says roll call first on number
Oh,
one.
I am so sorry.
But
My
that's okay.
apologies. Okay, roll call is Bartholomew.
Here.
Edwards.
Here.
Fowler.
Yes.
Hart. Absent. Poznanski. Here. Parker.
Here.
Malzahn.
Here. Perfect. Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, can I get approval of the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion by Edwards,
Support.
support by Bartholomew. Any discussion or changes?
Yeah, just one thing. Number 5, it's talking about unfinished business. Everything in the packet is referencing new business, even in the information that we got. So I don't know if that needs to be changed. New business instead of unfinished.
This is a special meeting, so I think the old business would probably go to the regular meeting,
Yeah, that's right.
which
Everything
would
listed.
be March 15th.
Yeah. Everything listed, though, says unfinished business.
We can just change it to new.
Yeah,
Not a
we're
big
talking
deal.
about new business
okay.
tonight.
We'll just
yeah.
change the word unfinished to new business. Is your motion still okay, Matt?
Yes.
All right, support still okay, Nathan?
Yes.
Any other discussion? All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we have a good agenda. At this time, we have a public comment. Is there anybody in the audience that wish to speak or give public comment for this work session? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to our new business. So I included 3 sort of different topic areas in your packet. The first one was what is our objectives discussion? And I just mentioned this because I really, my ultimate goal for having this meeting is just sort of to set the tone for how we're going to proceed in our next fiscal year. It will help Catherine and Tim draft a budget with what goals, what projects we want to include in that fiscal year funding, but also, sort of tell us what are we? And so I thought these 3 sort of key descriptions were timely. So do we consider ourselves mildly aggressive? Are we status quo, or are we in survival mode? I don't think our budget dictates that we're in survival mode, because I think that with a nice healthy fund balance, as indicated by our accountant, at the end of our last fiscal year, we were at $1.8 million in fund balance. So we had a pretty healthy little rainy day fund. It doesn't mean we certainly can spend all of that, and I'm not suggesting that we do that, but I'm not suggesting that we need to stay status quo either. So in my opinion, I thought we were mildly aggressive, but there's been some banter before of people thought we were overspending in some areas. So I just really wanted to get everybody's input and feedback on what you think our position should be as far as how we actively engage new ventures or our public and what they need. So I'll open up the floor to anybody's comments.
If you could define what you mean by mildly aggressive or status quo?
Well, status quo means we're pretty much going to do nothing. We're going to pretty much just do our minimum, what we're required to do, what we're currently doing, our trash pickup, our leaf pickup, those sorts of the sidewalk program. The way that we've been doing things and operating over the last 2 years would be status quo, sort of
So
doing
nothing
nothing.
nothing
new.
extra. Okay.
Right.
And then,
Yeah.
so what do you mean by mildly aggressive?
Aggressive would be in taking on a project or 2, something new, a new service, a new project, a new goal that may require some additional budgeting, which is what we did last year.
Yeah, then I would
and
agree with you that
we had that list, and we picked 4 or 5 things that we wanted to achieve. I actually included that list in your packet, and I was very surprised when I went through and checked them all off how much we actually did accomplish last year. So I would consider that to be mildly aggressive. So.
Well, I think we're doing a lot also with planning for the future with roads and infrastructure and things of that nature. So I think in that respect, we're being mildly aggressive. We're not going, crazy or anything like that, but we are planning for our future infrastructure issues. And I think that's very acceptable.
Okay.
Certainly like to see a continuation of the sidewalk replacement. I reached out to our contractor from last year, and he's said he'd be willing, he's happy to come back and keep going for us.
Do you think we need to be more aggressive in that area, and that we need to, instead of doing 1 or 2 blocks, do we need to get more contractors involved so that we can, replace all of the sidewalks in 1 fiscal year? That's sort of what I'm trying to get a feel for. How are we going to attack this?
I think it'd be whatever the budget can lend to that project would really be what would say how fast we would go with it.
The budget meaning use of prior year fund balance? Sorry, I know that's not a thing, Tim, but, there is some funding in our capital improvements plan, for instance, and we don't have a capital improvements plan, so we could fund more than, last year we did 50,000. So this year, if you wanted to do more, I would consider us more aggressive in that area if public safety on our sidewalks is an area of concern. There's a lot of areas of concern, and I guess we'll get to that more as we move into our projects. But I just wanted to throw it out there that I didn't know if you guys were just like tie up the purse strings and we're just gonna sort of get through the next fiscal year, just doing what we've been doing and not really looking to add anything new.
That's my idea, is tie up the purse strings and let's ride this thing out, because we definitely have been in a hole. I mean, not us, we've been pretty good here in the village, not bad. But the nation in itself, we're slowly digging ourselves out. And, I mean, like last year, you had a couple emergencies. Thank goodness we had the funds in place in order to take care of like the pump and stuff. But don't want to get too far down that road where there's nothing there, and then you're robbing these programs where you funnel money to, and you're going to have to take that in order to pay for some emergencies for the taxpayers in the village. So.
Okay. So you would rather us be a little more status quo?
I'd rather us be a little more cautious than jumping out there and just spending the funds.
Oh, I like that word cautious. Maybe something like cautiously aggressive instead of mildly. Maybe stay a little more on the safe side.
Okay. But not in survival mode where we're cutting
Not quite,
services?
yeah.
I mean, like the snow plows. I mean, we've had a mild winter, which is nice, and that money could be reprogrammed, rechanneled, or saved. Looking for the emergencies.
Well, let's hang on to that list just for a second. Is there any other discussion on? I think I have an idea of where we're at with our positioning. So I'm just going to move on to our list of priorities, because that sort of ties into where you're heading with that list, Zach. The priorities discussion. And so then I ask, well, okay, if we're going to even be cautiously aggressive, tell me where our focus should be. Are we focused on public safety, sidewalks, pedestrian crossings, those sorts of projects? Maybe a school liaison up at the middle school. We talked about that a few years ago. Are we more interested in recreation or roads? Any new services, capital projects, or just basically taking a look at a lot of our outdated ordinances, updating them, enforcing them, or creating new ones as they become necessary?
I think the number one thing is definitely our streets.
That's what I underlined,
Yeah, roads.
because it's kind of a necessary thing.
Okay. So roads would be your number one. Zach, do you have any one of those that would be your priority?
As far as with your roads, like storm sewers, would that be included in there? As far as
No, that would
grant?
be capital projects.
Capital projects? Because we still don't have anything down towards Dickinson Street down the end. I mean, we've been asking for years, but we flood out all the time when the water comes straight down from Van Dyke all the way down Dickinson Street, so I call you when I'm almost ready to send out the ducks.
Yes. Roads would be more actually resurfacing, milling, resurfacing, doing our curb and gutters. Instead of just using the hot box and cold patching, it would literally be, attacking our roads.
So the curbs and gutters would be part of the storm
One block
sewers?
at a time. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, I think you'd want to get the sewers done before you resurface
Yeah,
the road.
exactly.
For sure.
So if there's any money to, like, channel, I guess,
Yeah.
looking at some of these things you hear, that's something that's been needed for years in the village. And, you know, if you're looking for a project that we need to take up, that definitely needs to be taken up.
Yeah, I think if we go with the roads, the capital, or the sewers and all that would probably be detected, and then it'd have to be done at that time, you know, as they came across ones that are really bad. So it's almost a simultaneous thing, per se.
I think,
Well, this
but the
is-
Dickinson is more of a storm drain issue.
There is
not.
none.
Right, there is
yeah,
not a
there is
storm
none.
drain on your
Yes,
block.
there is
right.
none at all.
Right.
So
So it's not
so
necessarily a
you can't address the
sewer,
road
it's
until you
more of a
address the
storm.
storm sewer, so that's a major project.
Yeah. I was referring to like when you go by a drain, you
Well,
can see like it's the
I'm
side, and
referring
you can
to
see
missing
inside there's a
storm
big
sewers.
cavern, and you know it's just something that's gonna
Right,
have to
again,
be fixed.
the
Yeah.
storm, the storm sewers, okay. All right, so roads seems to be the overwhelming number one that I'm hearing, with possibly a few capital projects from Zach. Any other input, discussion? Okay, perfect. So then we can move on to item number C, which is the goals and project list. If you do refer to that sheet that I included in there, where's my sheet at, of last year's projects. Sorry, it must be out of order here. Someone have that handy? Can I borrow that? Oh wait, it's the second one down. I've got it. Just one down. So last year, in our capital projects and expenditures, we tackled some cemetery issues. The DPW fuel pod, that was a capital improvement that we had not actually even budgeted for, but we got that done at $11,820. We budgeted for the light pole conversions. That project is still in the works. I'm working with Rawhorn right now to get better pricing on current fixtures, what they're actually going to cost to do it now. We
We're looking
budget.
at conversion, not replacement, right?
Correct. We did not decide, we didn't have the money, I think, to do the whole light pole replacement. It was like over $300,000.
$385, yeah.
Yeah, but we anticipated an $80,000 or $85,000 or $67,000 conversion, and that we're going to split that with the DDA.
Yeah, that seems like a great price for that.
Okay, we budgeted for our TIP project, which was the repaving of Powell Road. That $141,000 is in our budget. That project is on hold. I haven't been able to get an answer from John Crum to the status of that. I put in another email to him last week. I did talk to one of our other liaisons, and he said, John Crum's your guy, so find out when that project is actually going to be done. He indicated to me he was still hoping that it was going to be in 2021, but I don't know if it's going to be more in the winter time or push back to spring. That's all I was asking, like, do you think we're still going to get it in this fiscal budget, or are we going to push that back? And I don't have an answer to that. But we did budget for it this year, so the money's in there. We applied for that grant for the Central Business District for the Mid-Brock crossing. Again, I haven't heard any word on that grant. Nothing's been announced yet, so hopefully soon. We did purchase the new leaf vac trucks, so everybody commented and seemed very pleased at how amazing this fall went. Actually having both trucks in service, because Tim at the DPW was able to duct tape and zip tie some things together to get the old leaf vac truck up and running. And so we were able to get 2 vehicles out, which made it a lot more timely. We did purchase the new police vehicle. I think you took possession of that today. Yes, so that's good. And we talked about the snowplow equipment, but we decided that we were going to hold off one more year on that, Zach.
That'd be good.
But that was just the project list that we threw out there last year and what we actually accomplished. So I threw that in there because there are still a few projects that we didn't accomplish on that list. And then this year, during all of our meetings, we talked about the following items, but we didn't really act on anything. So wanted to sort of keep it in everybody's forefront. Al has mentioned before that the wastewater treatment plant's going to need a new generator. It's about a $300,000 purchase. Probably sooner rather than later do we need to address that.
There's currently a generator out there.
There is a generator out there, but it's going to need a complete overhaul.
40 years old.
Yeah.
How many?
40.
40 years old.
40.
You
Okay.
act like
Yes.
it's.
No, that's young.
Right, right.
What's wrong with being 40?
We talked about a community newsletter, doing a quarterly newsletter or changing up our water bills. We decided we were just going to table that for now. I estimated that to be about $1,200 a quarter if we were going to do some sort of mailing like that. We did hear the road millage ballot proposal. That was a presentation that our consultant, James Vitrino, gave to us. That was about a $5 million purchase if we were really going to pass a ballot initiative to tackle the roads. That would not be all in 1 year. That would be, I thought it was a 3 to 5 year plan where we would sort of tackle the worst of the worst and then make our way through the village eventually in a cycle to sort of keep it going. So there's always ongoing road maintenance instead of letting sort of things deteriorate to the point that we are at now, and they pretty much just all need to be replaced. We talked about the residential sidewalks. Obviously, that's ongoing. We budgeted $50,000. The storms, the SAW grant that we heard from HRC, they reported back, there's about $286,000 of initial repairs. That's ongoing repairs that were identified as in need of immediate repair, remediation in the storm sewers. Again, that was a 3 to 5 year plan. That's what we addressed when we took a look at the utility rates, because there was no fund balance to address any of those repairs or those needs. So we adjusted the utility rates. Obviously, we put a moratorium on that rate, so we haven't started collecting those yet. But starting this coming quarter, we'll be able to hopefully stash a little bit of money aside that we can address some of those and get HRC to help us reprioritize and do the engineering so that we can calculate who's actually going to do the repair. Because some of it was very confusing to me, but some of it required, relining some of the pipes. Some of it needed to be totally replaced. So the different dollar amounts for each individual area, but they're all red dot. If you recall the documentation that you received in that packet, if you need it, let me know, because I don't think you weren't in office yet. I think you were at the meeting that we talked about it, but I can get you that. So that was an ongoing list. We talked about the emergency alert system. Nixle was one that we talked about specifically at about $3,000. I did attend a webinar and got some information on a second emergency alert system called Text My Gov. It's an opt-in, opt-out. It's about $2,500 a year annually for 500,000 text messages, both incoming and outgoing. The one good thing about that, and you do have some information in your packet, I don't know if you've had a chance to read it or not, is that it can be used not necessarily just for emergency alerts. It can just be for alerts in general. Hey, my trash didn't get picked up at this address. And then the alert immediately gets funneled to the point of contact that's set up. So typically the calls come in or an email comes in, hey, my garbage didn't get picked up. And then we text it to Cindy, and Cindy texts it to the GFL rep, who then texts it out to the driver, who goes and actually picks it up. So this would eliminate all those extra steps. So
What do you mean by opt-in, opt-out?
The resident?
the residents, right? So yes, is that what you mean? Opt-in,
Yeah,
opt-out?
you mentioned
Yes.
the emergency alert system and the new system,
Yeah, text my
opt-in,
gov.
opt-out.
Yes, so they can they would have to send us a text that says and then their phone number gets recorded as one in our database.
Oh,
And if
okay.
they want to be removed, they move out of the area, they don't find it any longer,
Okay.
the content any
Didn't
of value,
understand
they can just say stop in a reply and then opt back out of the system.
Okay.
So-
It's probably similar to a lot of the texts we already get for emergency stuff, just more localized to the village.
Yeah, yeah. And so refer to that worksheet if you think that's something that we want to look at. They're happy to come and give a presentation. They made the offer, and I said, well, let's just throw it out there as an option to see if it even makes our goals and objective list, because I said I didn't know if you felt that would be a valuable service or not, to be able to just text instead of emailing or phone calling. And then the one I carried over was the 2 snowplow trucks at $300,000. Tim, even though it was a very mild winter, our snowplow trucks and salt trucks were very busy. They are having an extremely hard time locating parts for that old plow truck. And it needs to be purchased, in fact, it should have been purchased about 6 weeks ago in order to guarantee delivery for next winter season. That's how far out they're being made. So if we're going to move on that, we need to let Tim know that he can actually start the order. But
Can you remind me, I know I wasn't on, but I remember hearing, didn't we purchase a plow truck or something last year or the year before?
you purchased a plow for the pickup trucks,
Okay.
right, and a salt box for it, but not the
All
big
right, the
snow
big one,
plow
okay. I
trucks.
see where
That
I
yeah.
just remember hearing that.
Yeah, so 2 totally different things
Yeah,
and much,
definitely.
much bigger budget for
Yeah.
300,000. So that was a list of what we talked about. I have a small list of other stuff that I think we should consider, but I also left some blank areas on this and thought, let's open it up to see, what your residents have been telling you, what goals or projects do you have that you might want to bring forward. So I can open the floor up, or I can start with my list.
Well, you've already
Your
talked
call.
about the storm sewers on Dickinson Street, so,
Right, the
I mean, that's out
ongoing
there.
list.
So I'm not sure as far as what type of approach to look into this or to have this done, or what would be the steps?
Well, we would probably have to allocate some capital improvement monies in this year's budget, and then we would need to get with our engineering firm and have them help us, again, reprioritize and figure out how we were going to bid out those repairs. Because it was an ongoing, I mean, they're not all able to be done in one season, but we can certainly look at a few of them. I don't know where your particular situation would fall in the scheme of immediacy, since obviously you haven't had a storm sewer drain there in quite some time, or ever.
Never.
Right.
Well, it would prevent me from calling all the time, having you open up the end of the street so we can get proper drainage, or when the snow's pushed down there,
Yep.
open that up too. So
Christine?
this 300,000 could be, portions of that could be allocated towards it. I see you have it written down on paper, so.
So it is planned to be looked at then?
Right now, I have no plans to have it looked at. I mean, we certainly can, if that's what we want to, prioritize, but right now,
Like a 3
no.
or 5 year out maybe project, or to see what it costs and
Well, yeah,
see
I
what we
mean,
can
just,
budget it out.
we can
I know that
get
this
the
is,
wheel moving as far as that
Yeah.
aspect of it and see what's going on. Because nothing's been done, really. And the street's deteriorating itself because the water just sits there on top of the street and goes away, and it's going to be one of your immediate resurfacings in a minute, so you might as well take care of the storm first.
Right, at the same time.
yeah, I was thinking that too, for sure. Wherever they know they're going to be doing work underground, do that first, instead of having to tear up new roads again. I know that this isn't as important as
streets
the
are
roads,
rotten.
but our park the park behind your business actually is looking pretty, I mean, we got a lot of issues in there.
It needs some updating and some attention,
Yeah, the gazebo's
which
been
was
there.
something that we talked about last year on that goals and objectives of $50,000 is what I threw out there. We didn't do anything with that. I asked Clara to take a peek at the park, and I think she did some routine maintenance to the gazebo. I don't know, maybe the steps got painted, but it's still,
It was put in 91.
it's looking pretty
I read the plaque,
dilapidated
so,
now,
yeah.
but, okay. So maybe
Something else.
you'd maybe like to see something done with the park?
Yeah, I mean, the brick pavers are starting to fall in certain spots. It's just, I know springtime, everything looks ugly, but it's looking
Okay,
pretty.
so Park and then Dickinson Street,
Curb and gutter.
storms, oh, I thought you wanted a
Oh, yeah,
storm
storm sewers,
sewer.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Megan, did you want to read your list? You brought a list that was nice and typed.
Yeah, I handed out a list. It's easier to, somewhere on that thing. To do that than to just tell you all, so then you'd have it for later. Basically, everything I've at least suggested isn't really going to cost money from the budget, And if it costs money, it would be our time. The first thing off the bat is an ethics policy, possibly an ethics board, so I put a question mark to that. It's up to us. Ethics policy, I feel, is very important. Maybe it's something that should have been done a long time ago. A lot of the classes I keep going to keep referring to it and saying, if you don't have one, you need to do it. So that's where that comes from. And then the board, should we want to have a board, my thought was they would do, it would be not a board that is convening, meeting every month. It would be like on an as-needed basis, as things arise, ethics violations, maybe they review issues such as like our pay. So we're not increasing and voting on our own pay. They would be the ones coming up with it and then bringing it to us to okay. So that's not our idea. Or even doing yearly reviews for our elected officials that are in the office. I know that we should be doing reviews with our people that work in there, but then we're not having any reviews for our elected officials that are in there. So should we want a board? There's many other things the board could work on, but that was just an idea. But definitely a policy. Number 2, I have getting our packets online for the public. I mean, they should be able to see what we're going through here at the table. It would be nice for them, whether they're here or at home. If we could have that online and available for them before the meeting, like when we get our packets, they get that Thursday. It's up on the website Thursday, Friday, so that they could look through it too and follow along. That's something that really, I've done it myself. I've taken my own packet, scanned it with my phone and put a PDF up. It really, 20, 30 minutes. It's not that time, labor intensive. Could definitely, I'm willing to help with all of these. By no means am I saying you do this. I just want to make that clear. Number 3, to have all the village board meetings recorded and posted. Right now, we are missing a couple, the cemetery, the tree board, the HDC, and our contract. Especially now that we have cemetery tax funding, we have funding going to the tree board. Our people should be able to see this and see what's going on at their own convenience. The tree board the last time they met, it was like what? It was very early in the morning, 8, 9 o'clock. Especially if they're not going to be convenient for the public to attend, we should be recording them. You go on the MIT, you look at it when you have time. And then kind of hand in hand with that is the minutes. I know that we post our minutes on our website, but let's get everybody's minutes up there. The DDA, the tree board, the planning commission. Again, this is something that the people can just come and read at their leisure. Maybe they don't want to watch the whole video, and they just want to see the synopsis of the minutes. Again, just something that people have asked for. A little more transparency in those areas. And then number 5 was something, I know that we were in the old meeting room the last time we did an abatement. I remember us saying, where are we at on our abatements? Like, how much have we abated? When are they falling off and coming back in? So it's just something, I know we said we should look into that, and then we just let it go. So I think this would be something I would happy to jump on and help with. Get a chart, a tally going of where are we, how many do we have, how much money is abated, when does it fall off? And then we could be planning with our 3 to 5 year budget when this tax money falls off, pulling it into that budget and helping us plan. The next thing would be with that, how much do we want to abate? Do we just want everyone come in, say yes? So that's why I have policy with the question mark. If we set a limit, when we do decide to say no, then we can say no because we have decided $10 million is the number, you are going over, and now we're saying no, and we are looking out for ourselves. We're not getting sued. Well, you told the last person yes, why aren't you telling me? So that was just something, do we want to put a cap on it, just to start thinking about that way. And then number 6, the plan for the water facility improvements. Like you said, we've raised the water rates, they'll be going into effect. When does that bill come out? March, April?
I believe it's, right,
April, I believe.
April?
People do the read.
or the very end of March,
It's
one
somewhere-
of the two.
yeah,
Yes, 'cause
somewhere in
it's-
there.
It cut off like the tail end of December 28th or
Yeah.
29th, so.
So we've done that, but then what I hear a lot of people asking is, well, what's this for? Well, it's for our improvements, our infrastructure. Well, for what exactly? And when is it going to start? And what are we working on first? Getting that plan in order, how long is this plan? It's going to be necessarily ongoing, like you said, with the streets. This is something we should always be taking care of. But that research that was done looked at some large areas, especially, that's what we looked at. So when will they get done? How soon? Getting that plan, and then getting that plan also on the website for the people to see, so that they can see what we're doing with their tax dollars that we just asked them for. It's a little easier to swallow when you can go, oh, okay, I can see what they're doing here, other than just improving. You know, it just, something that would, again, transparency. And the last thing, I printed you guys' off before I printed mine off, sorry. This was just something I wanted to throw out there. What if we put a committee together to research purchasing the school properties that are going to be available in the village? Not necessarily that we want to, but could we? And let's figure this out before they're for sale or they're gone. Do we want control of them? Do we want to make money off of them? Do we want to keep them? Is it even possible? Get that conversation, get that ball rolling, so that when the time comes, we know what we want to do. So those were my ideas, nothing that would actually need to be line item budgeted, but things to look at and do, which, again, I'm happy to jump on every single one and help out.
Sure. So I'll just go back and just clarify just a couple of things. So I have had those conversations with Todd Robinson about that particular parcel. We have ongoing, communication. So it's a good working relationship, not only just in checking in on how the demo's going, but just other things. And he has indicated that at this time, once the building comes down, there is no plans to sell that property. They're just going to restore it to green space. And then when they reassess the bond, the last bond that was approved by the voters, where the money stands, if they need additional funding, they will then sell that property. But they haven't ruled out that they don't need it yet in their long-term plan. So just letting you know that I have reached out to him and had that conversation. So, and I'll
Makes
certainly
sense.
keep working on that. I think Catherine has a pretty decent answer to several of your other concerns about the meeting packets and the meeting minutes posted online. We're unfortunately still waiting for a final dollar to come from them, but both her and I sat in on a webinar. Did you want to expand on that, or?
Yes, there is a lot of municipal software available to do meeting packets online and do other items with the meetings online, so it would be like an all-inclusive software package. I've sat in on a webinar about 2 years ago for one other company. We sat in last week for Unicode, who does our codification of our ordinances. I'm waiting for just a price quote from them. And yeah, I mean, that service is out there. But just want to make it clear, though, it does take more than 5 minutes to put the board packets together. So it's not just a quick click, and then we would then everything is done.
It takes 5 minutes to put them together and insult you in that way. I apologize.
So I mean, we would have to consider, but the software is available, and then we would want to consider: did we want any devices for the trustees to have? So you have all the electronic stuff out there. You can put it straight on the website, but then there would be, we could go straight to your devices. Is that something we want to consider? Because that would go hand in hand with the software. But then we would also need to consider, well, if we go electronic, then the paper's going to go away. One or the other, what's going to be the discussion. But there are multiple companies out there that do offer the software.
Well, and if we did go electronic, something I was wondering is, then is the village responsible for paying for our internet? Because if it's not a requirement for us to have internet to be a trustee, but now we're requiring us to have internet with a tablet, will that be something now the village is responsible for?
I wouldn't think so. I don't think the school is responsible for having internet in every student's home. They give them the Chromebook.
But they get
and
reduced internet if need be.
The lesson plan. So it's something that we could certainly look at, but it would be the same sort of scenario. A Chromebook, and everybody would have their packets there. The benefit of this software is that it's a one-click design. You know, the packet, all the information gets uploaded to them on the back-end portal side, and then they format it and provide just a one-click link, where right now I'm hearing from some residents that they don't know on our website where to find stuff. There's some that's on the calendar, there's some that's in the ordinance and minutes tab, there's obviously, you know, the Muni code link underneath the clerks tab. So there, I get it, that it may be a little bit more difficult to navigate our website than what we would hope. But a software like this sounded like it may be a pretty decent option for us to better involve all of us in this board packet process that is then searchable, because that's what I struggle with after the fact, going back and going, well, what meeting was that? I know we talked about it, and I spend hours digging through a box of papers because it's not all available handily.
But I do just want to reflect that the one software package that we were quoted 2 years ago was roughly $5,000 to do online meeting packets. So like I said, we're waiting for Muni codes.
Is that one time or an annual fee, or
It's one time and then annual fee. One time setup, and then there would be an annual fee involved.
Okay.
And I'm sure it probably depends on how many sets of minutes that they're uploading,
Correct, right.
That
So-
if you're talking not just ours, but every board, obviously that's a lot more documentation, then somebody has to find time to upload those. You know, Catherine, as the clerk of the village, is the recording secretary for this board, but not the recording secretary for the DDA or for the tree board. So all of those are taken by their own appointed secretaries and kept in accordance with whatever retention schedule we have. So there'd be a little more coordination, but certainly when we get the information on that, and they offered as well to either come and give a presentation online, or I think they may even have one that's just downloadable, so you don't have to attend it live, right? You can go back at your own convenience and just look at it, and so that may be an option to save us all a little bit of time. And the IFTs, I know, Sherry, at one time you had given me all that information because I had asked you, especially regarding Ford's, which still has an IFT, and it was a point of contention every time that I meet with them that they're still getting a tax abatement when they're clearly no longer investing in our community. And I asked them if they would just terminate that, and so far it hasn't made it through their legal department.
Yeah, and that's something
But-
we need to,
But
look
I'm
at
su-
the language. Does a phrase like that need to be added to these? Again, I couldn't go back. I know we did it a while ago. I couldn't find my last one we did. But a phrase in there, if you leave before X amount of years, you must pay this all back. You know, just to, you know, watch ourselves like that.
Right.
Yeah.
But I know that Sherry has that, and she can probably already get it, or regather it again from the tax base to at least get you the information that you're saying that we don't have. And no, we don't have any ones on the horizon that I know of. Although the MEDC is helping me. They've put a coalition partnership together for the Ford property specifically to look at how do we, in advance of them vacating, market it? How do we position the village? How do we make it as attractive as possible to any potential purchaser or developer that may want to be able to do something with it, so that we would limit our downtime? So I've asked them to, you know, if that's something that you need me to do, to have an IFT in place for X amount of dollars of investment, tell me what that is, and I'll bring it to council to let you know. But nothing has materialized yet, but that's the only one that I can think of.
I have a question for you. Are you guys done with that part? Because I want to go back to if I could ask you regarding your conversation with the school board, the superintendent, on the demolition of the property. Has rezoning come up in the conversation at all? Has nothing? So once the property is demoed, they do realize it is zoned R1, correct?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay.
And it would stay R1 until somebody purchased it and then asked for it to be zoned differently. So it would be the new owner, I guess, would be the one that would ask for it to be rezoned unless the school wanted to develop it themselves. But again, the same zoning process would be in place.
Because I think the residents in that area would prefer residential development as opposed, well, you're in it.
Absolutely.
I'm sure they would, right?
Absolutely.
I'm sure,
Right there, so,
right.
hey.
I'm sure they would.
Yes.
Single family, right,
want a
single
cemetery.
family. But, yeah, it's zoned single family residential now, and that won't change.
Because I can't put it, say how accurate the rumors are, but
That'd be a great.
I've heard multiple
Put
people trying to
bumpers at the
rezone to
end.
multiple, so that's the reason why I brought the question up.
No one has brought any project plans. They haven't even met with myself and Steve Casson, our village planner, to even ask what the process would be,
And
so.
the same thing would be for the prospect. That property is vacant land right now, so if they sell that, what's it currently zoned?
I'd have to look at the zoning
Besides-
map. On
Which one?
On
Football
Prospect?
field. Yeah.
Oh, Memorial?
A Memorial Field? They don't have any plans to vacate that. In fact, they're going to invest some dollars in bringing that track up to standards because they can't even hold official track meets there. It doesn't meet whatever the requirements
I know
are.
there was some talks with the catwalk also.
So the
If it
middle
wasn't going to be
school
used for
will use
school property or school use, it had to go back to the family that donated it.
That's tied up in legal.
Is it?
It's a legal issue
Oh.
right now, and yes, Mr. Robinson's legal team is, tackling that, not ours. but-
School going away, then
That's not Memorial.
Okay, so I have just a few more items of stuff that has come across my desk that I thought we may want to investigate or consider when we're looking at our overall goals list. I know that parking has been brought up. Parking is an issue. I think it would be a wise investment to pay for a parking study to see what areas of parking, I mean, not just counting parking spaces, because anybody can go out and count parking spaces, but to give some consideration to could we rearrange our parking? Could we do more one-way streets and do angle parking instead of parallel parking? To look at enforcement. Do we need to look at a metered parking, situation so that high visit spots have a higher turnover of parking availability for quick in and quick out patrons? I did ask Paul O'Meara from Rowe Engineering to give me a quote. He said it would cost about $3,600 for him to do that work. And for anybody who doesn't know Paul, he used to be in charge of traffic and parking in another municipality. So it is sort of directly in his wheelhouse and before he joined the engineering firm of Rowe. So thought I would just throw that out there. Obviously, the sidewalk, we need a sidewalk. We have to have a sidewalk put in across from the middle school, connecting Bradley Street all the way up to Copperwood, and then beyond that to Applewood subdivision. I've had a handful of residents that call, especially over this winter time. The kids cannot walk unless they walk on 32 Mile Road to get from Applewood to that middle school.
That's Washington Township.
It
Yes,
is, Washington Township is the Applewood connection, but from Copperwood across the church and down to Henry Malberg, that's the village of Romeo.
True.
So that's the biggest area of sidewalk. I reached out to the road commission to verify what's their right of way. It's 33 feet there, so now I have to have somebody that can just go out and sort of measure 33 feet from center line, where would that fall on the funeral home's property? But I think that sidewalk is absolutely a necessity to get that done over the summer so that by next school season, those kids that are walking have a safe route to school. Otherwise, the only crosswalk is all the way down by Sisson Street. So they do have a safe route to school, that the school itself does, and they're suggesting that all the kids cross at Sisson where there is that crosswalk. The road commission looked at the light timing, and they're going to repair the street lamp that's been out for a bit. But then they walk up by the cemetery, which is all right, except the sidewalk there is in severe need of repairs. There's all sorts of heaving and cracks, so I think in a joint, attention of focus, we need to look at East and West St. Clair for our sidewalks, and then that missing hunk that's over there by Henry's. So I don't know how much it's going to cost.
There's not a crosswalk at the light there by the school?
Going
No.
into the church, there's, I think there's.
Yes, but there's no sidewalk.
Up to Malberg's and then it stops, right?
The sidewalk ends just, there's a small little brick knee wall that's just north of Bradley, I'm sorry, just west of Bradley Street.
Yeah.
And it goes, not in front, there's a house, and then there's the funeral home. There's no sidewalk along any of that.
Yeah, okay.
And so the crosswalk that's there was fine when kids were parking
Parking
at the church, but they're all middle schoolers, and as far as I know, they're not driving, so.
That's right.
There should be enough room there to build a sidewalk though, because the old water tower used to be on the church property there. And that was significantly off the curb.
Yes.
And then it was on village property, so, or on the easement, I should say.
Yes, so we're going to take a look at that. It's estimated about 15,000. I don't know ultimately. If you look at the sight line, if you stand down where that sidewalk ends and you look up 32 Mile Road, there's all sorts of stuff that's in the way. Trees and
50 grand
utility
in it.
poles, and so I'm sure it won't make
Not
it won't make it an easy project.
Be
But
interesting.
I think we need to sort of look at getting that it engineered and figuring out the right of way.
Would that fall under the sidewalk program?
No, I think it would be a special project, the middle school sidewalk. The sidewalk project, I think, could certainly focus on the sidewalk that's along 32, along St. Clair, especially going west. Eastbound isn't bad because when they did the road improvements, they put that nice 5-foot sidewalk on the north side. So the south side still is a little bit in need of repair, but that's not bad. We have the utility meters. That was one of the things that we talked about when we looked at the water rates, was the DPW's need to put either drive-by read meters or electronic read meters. That was about 200,000. So if we wanted to look at one of those projects, utilizing the rate capture in our capital improvement plans. We need to look at the cemetery, and we need to look at the cemetery expansion. It's full. They're trying to assess, from the records, send out letters of families who no longer live here that may be interested in selling us back the plots that they've already purchased. But for the most part, we don't have any to sell. So if you don't already own one, you're not getting buried there.
Is it possible for us to do an auxiliary over on that property that we own? Was that over by 2nd Street?
That's what I mean, but no. To expand over there. Well, there's about an acre that's up by the water tower, near the retention pond, right at the location right now. Unfortunately, there's no roads there. So we have to put a road in order to be able to plot it out, because you have to have access to it.
We have that property over on the west side.
Right, on
I'm
First
sorry,
Street,
south side.
by the iron removal plant.
Yes.
Yes. I don't know that we'd want 2 cemeteries, but if we already have
Be a great
a
auxiliary for
parcel
village
there,
residents.
right. But as a capital improvement plan with that tax capture, I thought that's something we should look at, or a columbarium, putting one in there that would just allow for cremains burials instead of plots. So
Local residents.
I've asked Catherine, and I believe the cemetery board is going to meet sometime in the next couple of weeks to sort of take a look at that and get some ideas of cost to move forward. We just passed that millage this past year, so it's only, what, $75,000, what was that tax capture, 115?
0.75.
I forget.
15, but some of that went towards labor, so for capital improvement, I think we're down to 70 or 80.
70 or 80,000, right. So it may take a bit for us to have enough cash on hand to actually do that, unless we're going to loan in money out of the general fund or something, which, we could do, but. So cemetery expansion on my goals list. Refinancing our existing bond debt, certainly something that I thought we should take a look at it. It was probably 8 to 10 years ago when Mr. Russell was on the board. I was a new trustee at that time that we refinanced those bonds. So I've asked Treasurer Maddox to take a look at that to see, can we? There's 2023 is when we're eligible to do it?
Yes. That announcement, it will be in the board meeting minutes on Monday.
Okay. So we'll cross that off because we can't do that. An electric vehicle charging station, something that we talked about a while ago. There, as part of that MEDC discussion about what can be done at the Ford plant, there was a lot of talk about Ford keeping that as a electric vehicle facility, especially in its relationship, again, to the proving grounds that's right out here. And I say, well, what makes Romeo, an attractive target for that? Why would they bring that here? I attended a webinar for electric vehicle charging stations, and they mapped out all of Michigan, especially the southwest part of Michigan, and there's a charging station that you can utilize down by the 13 Mile Road campus, the tech center area, right? And then there's one in Port Huron, and then there's one in Lansing. Like, there's actually nothing around us
We got one at the gas station now.
that would, they do?
They just put something at the gas station. Actually, that was something I was going to bring up too with the electric charging. I sent it out. I thought I sent it earlier, but when I sat down, I made sure it got sent out to the board. There's actually a lot of funding out there
Right.
in regards to
DTE has
the
a-
electric charging
Yes.
in the state of Michigan also.
They have, it's about $4,500 or $5,000 per unit that you install, and then you can get a rebate based off of that. And I thought maybe that's something we want to look at for our municipal lots in town.
Yeah,
We
right
want to
there.
pull up
32
and,
Nice.
the problem is that if you put that there, then you lose a parking space
Yes.
because you don't want a non-electric vehicle parked there, and
Yes.
we don't know who would utilize it, but I thought it may be worth putting one or two in and just seeing how they're utilized. They're not big dollar generators, because I think at $1 an hour, it's what most of them charge for the electricity.
That's pretty cheap.
We're not gonna make money off of it, but it's
Nobody
really
loses
just
money.
the attraction. I mean, I know they have one at the Ford engine plant itself. But as far as on a road map, when people are trying to figure out how to get from their house to grandma's house, and they're mapping out their routes of
North Bailey might be the
driving.
Yeah, the
the
north
best
was my
spot, 'cause
thought.
it's not as,
Yeah, it's not as crowded, it's never full.
or don't we own a few of those spaces, Four Corners, there's the island? Don't we own both sides of that?
I think we do, yes.
So if we put some on that side, that would probably,
You might be able to get one or two.
yeah,
That would interfere more with the businesses though to some degree than the other parking lot.
yeah,
But just an idea that we might
Because that
want
would
to,
take away from
right.
Four Corners.
yeah. And they can't park there, true.
Yeah. Or the other parking lots available, essentially, that's never full.
I know, until that business gets in there.
Well, that's true.
Last month, we talked about the blight ordinance, that I'm going to meet with Mr. Bomarito and Mr. Casson and Mr. Clark in the next week or two to go over both of those. But, we identified a need for some sort of cleanup behind the 4 quadrants where there isn't a corral. I guess 3 of the quadrants, right? There's a lot of dumpsters. There's a lot of illegal, people that just drop off their stuff, dump it next to an existing dumpster just because it's there and there's not a lot of cameras. But I think that if we wanted to look at either subsidizing the GFL contract, because we had that bid out separately to have the central business district included in the service that our residents benefit from right now, that it would be an incentive for some of the business owners to not have a dumpster. They have them there because they have to get rid of their trash, but they don't necessarily need to have, a big 3 cubic yard. I mean, unless you're a restaurant, I don't know anybody else who generates that much waste that they have to have one, or that they can't do a wheelie cart, or they wouldn't say, hey, maybe I can just do a wheelie cart. If it saves me some money, I might consider that as a way just to clean up our blight, so.
So you're talking about using taxpayer dollars to subsidize the cleanups on?
Right,
dumpsters?
or, again, I'm going to mention it to the DDA to see if that's something that they want to take on out of their project, if they want to figure out how to implement some sort of trash program to help the businesses with their tax capture. But just putting a list together of ideas that somebody needs to work on, because trash is certainly a problem in the central business district.
So you're using DDA money as opposed to just regular?
If they
our
want to,
funds.
I don't know that the DDA, I mean, they haven't had their goals and objectives session yet, but just discussion and throwing it out there that we've identified this is a need, and so how do we want to do it? We can choose to do nothing, or we can tackle it and say, hey, let's create, a different program or an ordinance, or get corrals put in, or, pay
Who
for
funded the corral behind like the office pub in Youngers?
the DDA.
The DDA did that.
Yes, the DDA did that. Mhm.
So they could partner with your cleanup downtown as opposed to using regular residential tax dollars to offset any cost to downtown.
Well, the businesses pay tax dollars too.
But
So, right, I'm just saying,
It's a
right.
different pool of money, and you're asking.
It all goes into the general fund. So it's not a different pool of money, but the residents do pay, and we pay for the GFL contract out of our general fund.
Our residents shouldn't pay for the cleanup of downtown Romeo. I mean, as far as the dumpsters provided, those private businesses, their money should not be involved.
Unless you look at it that it's the businesses that are also paying taxes, and they don't have the benefit of trash pickup, period.
Well, then they should
It's
partner
not
with the
paid for,
DDA to where some
so.
of their money's going.
Right, there are municipalities that just have one waste hauler contract that covers both the businesses and the residents. That's why I had it bid out separately, and we obviously didn't do anything with it, but I'm just bringing it up as an option.
right.
The other thing that we need to take a look at is our parking space fee structure. We've identified that there was an ordinance on the book through our planning, Steve Casson, who said, hey, a business can come in and not have enough parking on their site, and other municipalities have a fee structure so that they pay X amount of dollars to offset that. So you have the municipal lot use, but then you have a fund balance that helps pay for care and maintenance, for striping, for these sorts of dumpsters, or landscaping, or some other sort of signage that may be necessary. We don't have a fee structure in place for that, so something that I think we should look at. Wouldn't cost any money, but not really sure how to tackle that. We talked for years and years about new welcome to and wayfinding signage around Romeo, that we don't, have much other than the one that's down the hill out front of Fifth Third Bank, I guess, would be on the corner of Durham. So I think it would be nice to have a welcome to Romeo sign somewhere. Not sure where it would be put, but we talked a while ago about the Lafayette and Railroad Street, a trailhead access point that would be behind the substation, behind DTE. Right now, people are just utilizing a little dirt path.
How about the car wash?
Yeah, in front of that car wash to get over there. I don't think it would cost much, even if we just had some asphalt and if we would get it right away from DTE to allow people on the south side of 32 to hop on the trail versus parking across the street at the other trailhead park and then either having to cross back 32 or if they're heading north. The Parks and Recreation Commission, no money necessary, but I'm not really sure how strong to be in insisting that the Village of Romeo have fair representation on that Parks and Rec Commission. So far, Washington Township has done nothing with the request to have the bylaws rewritten. I know that Clara, the Parks and Rec Director, and Mr. Breinart went and made a couple of presentations, and I believe that they haven't taken that up, but still think it needs to be tackled. And Nathan touched on the village park improvements. I had $50,000 suggested on this list. And then two other big things, employee succession plans. I'm going to mention that in our closed session a little bit, and have Dan and Al address the board on those two things. And then a wage and salary compensation study also to go together with our union contracts, but that sort of ties into one of the items that was on your list as well with the ethics board of, how do we look at those things and what's fair. So, we have a lot of ideas on the board. Anybody want to help me sort of prioritize them or take a look at what do we want to suggest to Tim and Catherine that we maybe take a look at to bring to you in our first draft budget?
I like your little sheets here with all the suggestions. I think we should fill them out and give them back to you. It's exactly what you think. And then we can go over it at the next meeting.
You were suggesting that we bring it back to Monday's meeting? I know you're not going to be here, but you can certainly get that to me in advance.
The next budget area meeting instead of the council meeting?
Well, I need this list so that we can draft a budget, because without knowing how many projects you want to build in there or how aggressive we're going to be, it's like shooting fish in a barrel, right? So I need to give Tim and Catherine some sort of idea to say, yeah, we want you to budget $300,000 for 2 snowplow trucks.
I can give you mine by
Yeah, we want to, okay.
When's the next goals and objectives scheduled again?
Well, we only had one goals and objectives meeting, but there was 2 other budget workshops. There
Okay.
was 2, and I think we did those on the Mondays. April 12th? Nope, that's the DDA meeting, excuse me. Because the 5th was.
Well, I think if we were looking at the 300,000, I think the generator has to take precedence over the snowplow. If we had to choose one or the other, if we weren't going to do both, I would be more for the generator. That just seems.
Yeah.
And I don't think, but that generator wasn't a one-year purchase, right? I think you were suggesting that we budget for the next 2 or 3 fiscal year cycles.
Depending on how much money we have coming in, and obviously what it's going to cost. 300,000 is a ballpark figure. Yeah.
So we need that 300 in one shot, or are we saying we're splitting that between budgets?
I
Is that
think
what-
he's suggesting that we could budget it, because I don't think he needs to purchase it this year.
Okay.
He needs to just know that we're planning for its purchase because it's such a large amount.
Okay.
But it will last the next 2-3 years?
Yes, the current one is inside the building, and when we did the asset management study, they wanted like $600,000 to replace it. Well, my plan is to just leave the one inside the building, abandon it, drop one outside on the pad, and I could do it for half as much. So that's, and it should last, yes.
So one of the big ones, and we talked about roads. Roads was a priority. Roads requires a ballot proposal. There are 2 special elections coming up this year to fill Pete Lucido's seat. So I believe there's one in August, or there might be one in April. I'd have to check with Bruce Township, but
May.
if we were,
That's
you think
fast.
it's May?
May, August, November is the schedule.
Okay, so we might, if we were going to
Double check.
move on it, we may still have time to get the ballot language approved into the county for the May special election.
Can we direct our engineers to do a study on the Dickinson Street storm sewers? And put some money into the budgets for that, as opposed to, since they're already under contract with us?
We can, right? We can allocate some money. I mean, I can ask them to give me an estimate on what it would cost to engineer that, to look at that, and then give that, I can report that back to you to see if you want to approve it then. I don't think it's going to be that much money. I don't know what the repair will cost, but to have HRC actually look at and make a plan for it, usually those sorts of things are a couple of $1,000s.
Yeah, if I remember that, I think they actually did a study in the past of the condition of the street, so they'll just have to reactivate that and update it.
Well, they just did the Pacer study, so we know, like, they did that about 6 months ago. We know the updated current condition of all of our roads, and we had a grant that paid for that. So they did that study. I don't know that they've taken into account, I mean, I know that they didn't, doing that work, the storm sewer situation, but I can certainly ask them to put together a proposal
Thank you.
of what it would cost to engineer and implement a project like that, and give you that idea. Okay, so if we're looking at budgeting for the wastewater treatment plant, and just break it in 3s, right? So
What it sounds
thirds, right? Are we going to look at the ballot costs for a road millage? Sorry.
Can I add some stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Tim
Okay.
has stuff.
Just to help you out.
Okay.
So realize government funding is not one pot of money. Each line on the, I don't know if you gave them the fund balance breakout.
I have not given that to them yet. Nope.
So,
I probably should.
right, so when you're talking about capital, you're not talking about lump sum. You're talking about what's available in each fund for each project. So when you talk about sewer versus roads, you're talking about two different pots of money, right? So you can't prioritize one over, well, I guess you could, but it doesn't make sense because there's two pots of money. So, like for instance, water and sewer, the rate structure that was adopted by the village council last year in 2020 was not a pay-as-you-go implementation. It was drinking water revolving fund, borrowing money, and doing projects in math, right? The rate structure doesn't put enough, the rate structure that's set by the village council does not set enough money aside to do pay-as-you-go projects. Like, the generator is a 3-year project, just to come up with enough cash for one item. And then you just didn't do anything for 3 years for the entire system. It doesn't work, right? You're not generating the cash for the water and sewer for pay-as-you-go. The rate that was set was to borrow the money up front and do the projects as needed, right? It was $5 million or $7 million, I think the village was supposed to borrow to do the projects, and then the rate paid the bond monthly. So that's one thing. Motor pool, there's only 140,000 available. So that's it. Once that money's gone, that's gone. So 140,000 probably doesn't buy your dump truck. And if it did, there would be nothing left, right? It's probably more better for smaller vehicles and to borrow, like we had to borrow for the leaf trek to make the payment, right? Because there wasn't enough cash in the motor pool fund to buy a large vehicle out of the motor pool fund. So, and like the cemetery has 111,000 right now that it could use for capital improvements. So a lot of these things can be structured based on what money you have. Like the municipal street fund has 261,000 that the TEDF grants are due now, right? They're going out now, which is up to 250,000 grant, 250,000 local match. Those grants up until 2 years ago were non-existent. You couldn't get local grant money unless you had a large industrial facility coming in that created jobs, or the state wouldn't give you grant money.
Right. Our last one was denied for Roswell, right, yeah.
Last year's was denied, so now this E-Courses was denied last year too. We got it the year before. So, but we always put in for the 250,000 max because you can't get the grant money anywhere else. So it's dollar for dollar. So those are all kinds of things. Prioritizing projects maybe should be based on what funds you have available. Just a suggestion. Because you have funds, you have more funds in certain, you have available cash in certain funds, and you don't have so much in others, right? So you could easily put in 250,000 to match your EDF grant if you want to spend a couple. Well, you probably could just redo the grant application, but that's just one idea. Where you know you only have 100,000 for cemetery this year, right? If you want to spend everything in cemetery fund, and motor pool you only have 140,000. Do you want to borrow the water and sewer drinking water revolving fund 2021? Do you want to submit application? That takes a year to go through the application and get approval. So by 2022, you could do projects. And then the general fund has $1.3 million in it. Keep in mind that. So storm sewer either has to come out of the general fund or it has to come out of your public improvement fund. It can't come out of your street funds. So that's another thing. That's general fund money. So I think the village has considerable money to do capital projects. But looking at the funding source and what you have is where I would start. Because you do have money to do sidewalks in major and local if you want to spread those out. It's just, I would look at your funding source, how much money you have available, and then prioritize your projects. Would be a recommendation.
What's the status of our saw grant?
It's all completed.
It's all completed?
All the work, that's what I was talking about, identifying those areas of needs, and that's why, what Tim looked at when he suggested the rate increase to accomplish those. But we haven't captured any money yet because we haven't actually started billing with those new rates. So no work has been done.
The new rate is supposed to pay for a bond, a drinking water revolving fund bond, not a pay-as-you-go project. Because that would have been the higher rate that you guys chose not to go with. You chose to go with the middle rate, which was borrow the money and pay the bond instead of pay-as-you-go, which was the rate that was like higher, 28% increase, I think it was almost. So you guys didn't choose the pay-as-you-go rate. So things to think about, just things.
And so I was on the MML's Monday morning, I don't know if you attend that, but they were talking about this round of stimulus money that's coming out. And I asked Catherine if we were at one of the entitlement villages, so is our money coming from the state, or is our money coming directly from the federal government? And
So, yeah.
well, but they don't know, they have no idea how much money we're getting. We're supposedly getting some money from this last round of stimulus plan, and it could be $1 million, and we have until 2024 to spend it, or?
No, it is. I just
Right.
took a picture of it. So your stimulus money that's coming is $666,500 based on the estimate.
Can we change that?
So $666,000 will be coming from the village of Romeo as soon as it gets reconciled by the House, which will be very soon. The thing is, what strings are attached? Does it have to be public safety like it was before? Does it have to be COVID related, which means public safety money? And if that's what we're waiting. E-Course is getting $1.7 million, right? So we're sitting and waiting what strings are attached at that money, you know? If it has to be public safety related, it kind of narrows down what you can do.
Right. From what I'm hearing, it is not. But until it's actually signed by the House and by Biden, we won't know. All I know is that it's not going to be mandated by the state. So they're not going to be able to utilize that to short us on our CVTRS money.
But they may short us on our overpayment money.
Yes.
So that's all these things in the works, right? You don't know
Right.
what strings are attached yet. So they may start moving money like they did before. They shorted our revenue sharing and gave it to us in CARES, so it had to be used for public safety. Like they may do the same thing they did before.
Well, I have a question for you. Public safety. Our water currently runs down Dickinson Street, runs into the drainage ditch, which heads to the Clinton River. Picking up all the stuff as it goes. Wouldn't that be a part of public safety as far as drinking water or contamination, what is taken off the street, the salt water?
Nope.
Stormwater is governed by Eagle, the village has to
Well,
get a stormwater.
I'm just looking at the drainage situation that we currently have. And there is nothing there right now to prevent the drainage of that water from going into our sewer system. It just empties into a ditch, which then drains into the Clinton River system.
But there may be soon, because Eagle is implementing a plan that we may have to be able to treat all stormwater runoffs. It's not legislated yet, it's just been bandied about, and Al is saying there's no way. There's no way we can do this, but Eagle is saying you may not have any choice. But it's not a public safety issue. Public safety, he means police, fire, right? So for the CARES Act money, we had to utilize our fire contract with Bruce Township for that last round of stimulus money. We just allocated that towards the community stabilization money to make sure that we were spending whatever we could
And don't forget,
to
we have
capture
lead
that.
service line that's mandated 10%.
Lead server? Okay.
Lead service line replacement's mandated too, that has to go in effect soon. But the village has put away money for water replacement, so you need to think about that. I think that it's already up to 50,000 in it. So that's another thing. Do you want to do sections, or do you want to wait to do the whole village at one time?
Do we have a lot
That's
of...
part of public safety too? Lead
We do
replacement
not
lead lines?
have any lead piping here, but they are, it's a little bit weird because, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, I don't mean to throw you under the bus. Villages are a little bit exempt from that because villages can't do maintenance on private property. And the service lines where they're positioned right now, the fittings, it would have to require us to access those. And so there's been some other municipalities that have challenged that new requirement on behalf of Eagle, saying, well, you can't make us do it if we can't have access to it. So there's some...
Right, excuse me, right, and I don't know what the status of that is, but under your existing ordinance, the village is responsible for service to the so-called stop box. And then from the stop box to the house or to the structure is the property owner's responsibility. And I don't know, as we sit here, where it stands with respect to a municipality's ability to require or go on somebody's property. Typically, the government doesn't get to go on private property and do whatever it wants, even if ostensibly it's for a public purpose.
Those applications are also due by June. We're just submitting ours now, so, for the grant funded drinking water revolving fund again, so.
Okay.
Lots of projects.
Right, there's no shortage of projects that need to be done. It's just helping us focus on how you want to tackle it, and what's the priority. We do still need to account for the budget for the new well number 5. It's going to come out of our capital improvement fund. I think we had the first installment, what was that, Bill? Did you see that today? I think it was $40,000 for the casings or something. That's the first little advance that we're going to start paying. So we will see some of that in this fiscal year. I don't know if it'll be all or part of it, but so this fund balance for the capital project fund is going to be reduced.
What's your timing on needing this priority list?
Well, we need to have a budget drafted and approved before June 30th, right? We wanted to get it to you and approved in May, which would require 1 or 2 of the budget workshops then. That's why we scheduled 2 to look at it.
The reason I'm asking is a little bit like what Zach was saying. Maybe I didn't write all this down, all these ideas, and my memory might not be able to contain all these ideas in one shot. So if we could bring all these ideas onto one nice sheet of paper like you have here, it might give us a time to look at them all at once, and because you had some very good ideas and you had some very good ideas. These are some very good ideas. And
so everybody can take Megan's sheet and this sheet that went out with the fund balances. I passed that around. I should have passed that out earlier. This is the additional list that I read through, and then the one that was in your packet, which has, so that's all the projects with the exception of Zach's Dickinson's.
It's the only one I wrote down.
Right. And you can take a look at that if everybody wants to just look at it and let me know by next meeting. You can, hand them off, send an email. We can add it as an agenda item to next Monday if that gives you enough time just to sort of.
Somewhere in your file somewhere.
I don't know that we need to sort of chat about it again. We just need to be able to let Tim and Catherine do their job and draft a budget.
Can I ask Tim a question? Of the things we've talked about, you're saying, look at our fund balances first. What we've talked about, where should we be looking? Can you tell us specifically so that we can be weighing it against the correct fund?
Right.
Or maybe you could send us don't tell us all now, that's a lot, we got a lot of ideas. Could you put the fund balance and then put the idea under it in an email or something so we can be weighing that in the proper context?
You mean where the funding source would come from?
Yeah.
So you know how much money you can spend on each one?
Yes.
That's what we had last year in this list that I ran off, that's checklisted. It has the fund balance and it has the proposed project list. So, yes, we can work on that.
So that we can better, you're completely correct. If there's no, why are we doing a project if there's no money? Where are we pulling it from?
Well, that's where you do the loan, things like that. You do then you pay on the loan
Our bond or whatever.
or bond, yes.
Yeah, that's how water and sewer was set up
Yeah.
with the rate structure, was to borrow the money and then do the projects. Because there's not enough money here to do projects.
Right.
Right.
There's not.
Maybe, if we take time to do that, maybe in the next couple of days, we'll have better clarification of that, the last stimulus package money too, of what strings are attached to that, so we would know where we could utilize that extra $600,000.
Can I just say, getting $666,000 from pandemic just sounds, having 666. It just doesn't, could we ask for a titch extra to or less to throw that off, please?
There was some change in there.
665.
Okay.
On the list you gave us, it's talking about the electric charging stations. I see like 5,000 a piece on there.
That's how much they estimated that they cost to install. There are rebates, but I don't know what that amount
Okay, I was gonna
is.
say that's probably not even close. You're gonna have to have DTE service put in and a lot to go with those. So that number's probably not even realistic.
That's what DTE told me, on average, in the webinar that we
For them
attended.
to put a service and then have the station and everything put in.
To have a charging station installed, they said it was between $4,500 and $5,000.
After rebates?
No, to have it installed, I don't know what the rebate, I thought the rebates were towards the usage each month. Like, if you have people plugging in, obviously your
Yeah, I mean,
utility
we've
rates
looked
are
at
gonna
them,
go up.
and I mean, anywhere from 5 to 10 just for the station itself. Plus, you know, you get, a lot of them get their own service from DTE and then all the other stuff involved with it, so that.
Okay.
Yeah, we might want to, if we're basing on 5,000, we're probably gonna be off slightly.
Right, so we would have to probably have it quoted, officially, if that's what we wanted to do,
Yeah.
but, all right, so I'll work with Tim and Catherine and put the proposed capital projects list together under the right funding from all the ideas that we sort of threw out, and then get that back to you, and we can help prioritize it better from there. Do you think that will be?
Well, I mean, kind of going back to the wastewater treatment plant generator, essentially, I won't say it's a freebie because that's not true, nothing's free, but we're already going to be collecting to pay the bond. We might as well go out and get the bond and make it happen, type of thing. So,
And are you saying, Tim, is there grants available for something such as that?
No, but if you look at capital projects,
Well,
wastewater
it's not gonna
treatment plant,
come
there's
out of there.
161,000 in there, and then you would spend all your money.
Yeah.
So you can't go buy a $300,000 generator because you don't have the money for it.
Correct.
Right, you have to borrow the money and pay the bond. You don't have any other options.
Okay.
So, because the funding's just not there.
Right, so we borrow the money, we get the bond, we pay the $300,000 out of the borrowed money, and then we use the $161,000 to pay the bond payment.
Over 20 years or whatever.
Right, is what he's suggesting. So,
But you
yes,
have to get your project list, right?
Yes.
So if you're going to go borrow $5 million from the state of Michigan, you need to know what you're going to spend the $5 million on. You just don't want to borrow $5 million and sit on it for 10 years and pay interest for no reason.
right.
It doesn't make any sense. That's why you have your projects list that they already gave you when you set the rate structure last year from our auditors. You have your project list, but you
Right,
need to
the
know which
SOG.
projects you're going to do. Or don't go borrow the money. And you have to apply for the loan and have the project list on it already when you apply from the state. All part of your budgeting process. So if you're gonna do X amount of streets and your generator and whatever else was listed and it comes up to $5 million, that's what you need to know.
and when is that application due, June 1?
It's coming real soon, I think it's June.
I thought so too, could be the end of May.
And then it gets submitted, then they apply to approve you for funding, then you have to get the funding, then you have to put it out for bid. I mean, it's not like, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a
Okay.
process.
Well, sounds like we'll work and then bring back a new proposed condensed list on one sheet of paper. And then we can help prioritize from there. So I'll probably, I don't know, I don't think I can get that accomplished by Wednesday for this board packet.
But I think we can present some ideas ourselves just from these 3 sheets.
Okay.
You know, some priorities, so.
Okay, so
If anything else comes up, email you by the end of the week, then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have any other ideas or something, is that what you mean? Okay. I guess that's going to conclude this portion. We have an executive session on our agenda right now.
I'll make a
So,
motion that we go into.
yes, I need a resolution to approve us to end this portion of the meeting. So I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And then I need a resolution to enter into closed session, a motion to enter into closed session
Second.
for the purpose of union negotiations
Gotta make a motion.
and strategy.
I was going.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Parker's, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, that's a roll
Okay.
call vote,
Oh,
please?
sorry,
Oh, roll.
I'm sorry, who was that second?
Parker,
All right. You ready for roll call vote?
yes.
Okay, Bartholomew,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Edwards,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Yes.
We got a break.
President Melvin.
Yes. All right.
Motion to come out of closed session?
Support.
We have a motion by Fowler, support by Bartholomew. Roll call, please.
Fowler?
Yes.
Bartholomew?
Yes.
Poznanski?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
Edwards?
Yes.
President Melzan?
Yes. For the
Motion
record, it's
carries.
10 o'clock. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Good night.
you.
Thank you, everybody.